Hello, and welcome to the Female Finance Collective podcast, where we encourage women to have open and honest conversations about all things money. Today, we're going to talk about money and not just money management by ourselves, but how we think about and work with money with our partners, our spouses. So we're going to share our personal stories. I'm really excited to hear how Jen and Marilee also kind of manage their money with their partners and spouses. And we're just going to have a great conversation about that. So I can just start a little bit. Managing money by yourself is a big deal, right? And so thinking about doing that along with somebody that you love or somebody else, it's a lot, right? And we all will do it in different ways at different stages of our lives as well. So you might hear us talking a little bit about kind of in the beginning, it was this way, and now in our marriage, it's this way, those kinds of things. But let's just have an open and honest conversation about managing money with those that we love and that are in our lives. Marilee, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'll go first. So I am in, I guess, a newer relationship. So I dated my partner for a while, and we're just getting to the point where we have some shared finances. And it's really been an evolution because, I had a prior relationship, and it's no surprise that finances can have a big impact on relationships, and often it is the number one reason why people end up separating. Like money has a lot to do with it. So I was really nervous to combine finances. I've done my own work with saving money. I was the one that was deciding what to do with my income. And it feels really, really scary to combine that with someone else. And what I often find when I work with clients is people's money personalities are very different. So there tends to be one person that has a bit more fear or stress about money, and they tend to be a little more careful with their spending. And usually there's one person in the couple that is more of a dreamer, and they may not pay attention to the details, and they just view money differently. And a lot of that comes from our childhood experience and how our parents experienced money. And I had very different parents in terms of how they looked at money. And I'd say that I have a good blend of those personalities, but there were some definite fears when it came to combining my money with someone else. Um, I'm detail oriented, my partner is not. So that's been an issue that's come up a few times. So the way we actually handle our joint expenses is that I'm the one that does the tracking, and he, provides me with his half for a lot of the expenses that we have. We don't have a joint account yet. That's something we'll probably do at some point, but for the time being, we've kept our finances really, really separate. And one of the main reasons for that is because we each have kids, and my kids are still young. So a lot of what, if something happened to me, a lot of what I have would go to my kids. At some point, that will transition, but for the time being, that's kind of the way it is. It feels complicated, but we're starting to think about some future decisions together. And we do talk about money a lot. So it is a conversation that we have a lot. And that has alleviated a lot of the fears that I have about combining finances or making joint decisions together. So we're new at it. We've made some larger purchases together, but it's kind of the starting stages. That's where we're at.
The biggest thing that struck me from what you said is like, we have to talk about it, right? Like, I think that if that is going to be the theme of this episode, is communication is really huge. And maybe once if you decide to combine finances or keep them separate, or however anybody does their finances, over time, that communication need becomes less and less, right? Because you have a routine, you know what everybody's doing. But I think at the beginning, communication is huge. So when we got married, I was like had a handle on my finances, but I was still paying off some of my debt. Like I still had student loan and things like that that I was paying off. And when we got married, I was like, how are we going to do our money? Like I was nervous because my husband made a lot more money than in his job than I did as a teacher. And I didn't really care what we did, but I just felt like I really needed to know like what was going to happen so that I could like mentally prepare. And he was like, we're just going to combine our finances. It's fine. And I was like, okay. And so at first we got a joint account. We like went to the bank together. We opened an account. That was both of ours. Um, we each had a separate account until we got married, like for whatever things that were like in our own names or whatever. And then we closed those. And my husband was just like, what's mine is yours. Like the money in the account is ours. And that was really like lovely, but like, and an easy conversation. Obviously, I didn't even say anything. He just was like, this is how it's going to go. But it was really awkward for me because I was like, I felt like I was spending someone else's money, right? Because we were newly married. It didn't feel like our money yet. We didn't have really like, I mean, when you first get married, unless you've dated a really long time, it is like a new partnership, right? That it like things change, it's a little bit different. It was weird. I felt weird. And he was like, you can spend the money. And I was like, well, my paycheck was only this much and whatever. And it took me a little like a year. And then I was over it. And then I was like, what's yours is mine. I can buy stuff if I want, right? We kind of had an agreement. I mean, I guess we just haven't talked about it in a long time that like something up to a certain amount of money we could just buy without asking the other person. But if it was over, like, I don't know, we had some number, $200, $250. If it was over that, we would be like, hey, this is a thing I'm thinking about getting. How do you feel about that? So we did kind of have that set up. I like to call myself the house manager. So I typically pay for anything the house needs, right? I'm the one who makes the Target runs and the group buys the groceries and all of that. So I manage that kind of spending, which I think just naturally means I spend more money than he does because I'm spending all the time on things that we both need and use. Which is kind of an awkward thing, I think, when you think about it, because it does make me feel like I spend more money than him, but I'm really spending on things that are for both of us or for the household. So that's kind of a weird dynamic that I'm sure some couples have to think about. But we've never questioned like the money being both of ours. There was times I wasn't working, there was times he wasn't working, and it was just our money in a pool. And we have had more and more and more conversations over the years to get more specific and more clear about our money. How do we want it invested? We didn't used to talk about that, which we just rolled with what he already had and what I already had separately. Now we've had conversations about how we want to invest and save together. We've had conversations about saving for retirement. What are our priorities now? If you're not working for this stretch of time, how are we going to shift our priorities? Like, so we've had those ongoing conversations where our money has changed, but over time, we've really just grown, I guess, as individuals and as a couple with how we manage the money. But since we got married, it's been just in one pool, in one account, and that's just how it's been. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but it has worked. We haven't fought about money. We've never fought about money, which is, I feel super fortunate about that because I know that that's a huge point of contention for a lot of couples.
Yeah, I would totally agree. No matter what, the communication is like number one. And I would say number two would be trust, right? When you do make those decisions together through communication, can you and will you trust that both are going to keep the agreement or both are going to bring up an issue, feel safe, right? Trust has a lot of safety in it. Like if you get snapped at when you're, asking or you're spending more money, then you're going to trust less to bring that up with that person, right? And so trust is such a big piece, just looking back at our situation. So my husband and I were both teachers and both full-time teachers, and I wanted to go half-time to be at home when I had the kids part-time. And that moment, he was very, very supportive, and that was like our big our first big decision together about money, because obviously I'd be cutting my salary in half. And we had to decide together if that was the best move for ourselves. And so we've always been very good about communicating, but I would say like we're also I've been married for 24 years, 20, yeah, 2000. And so we're super comfortable with our money situation. And so that communication like kind of stops because we don't feel like it needs to. But then when it needs to again, because I don't know about everyone, but I would think everyone's going to have points in their lives where they do need to probably talk about money again, whether it's how to spend a raise or invest a raise, or like you said, Jen, like learning to invest together or deciding on, your wealth building strategy together, right? Because those things don't come until they come. You have to get to a certain point. You can invest from the beginning. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast, even while you have some debt. But that strategy is completely different than when you are working to build wealth, for example, through those investments. We are the kind of people that have moved around a lot. And so each time we decided to move to another country and look at new contracts, and understand living expenses and all that, we were forced to have those money conversations every time as one piece of our decisions. And I know that's not very typical necessarily, although my understanding is like the average number of jobs people have these days has really gone up.
Yeah.
And if you think about the whole side hustle culture that we're in, side gigs, like there's ways to make more money now while you keep your 9 to 5, right? So it almost feels like money conversations are probably should be a more of an ongoing thing. And what are your dreams and what are your goals together? And then those money conversations need to or should happen there. But I was just thinking about the trust piece. Like you got to trust each other. And obviously you're in this relationship with this person, and trust is not only about your money, it's about so many things. But if that communication is hard, I'd say that's a thing to work on, is, getting some help to help you have those money conversations or whatever, because it's super complex and affects our every single day lives. That's why we have this podcast, right, ladies? Like, it's so important that we're just talking about money. That's our whole tagline, is open and honest conversations about money. So we too have combined accounts, and then we'll just continue the conversations. I manage it all, and so I realize at times I need to inform him a bit better rather than just saying, we can't spend that much money at the grocery store, right? Because then that breaks down our communication and kind of damages the trust between us and working together. So I've realized that, like being the money manager, I need to keep him more informed. I also am trying to keep him more informed if something happened to me. Like he wouldn't know how to get into all the accounts or all the accounts that we have and all that. So, I've been working on that too, using 1Password and shared password storage and stuff, because that's another element of all of this. Is what do you want to happen if something happens to you? Like Marilee said, to go to her kids, that makes sense, to go to your spouse, and then for that to happen, what do you need to have in place so that can happen more easily, right? I'm kind of scared, like all the accounts we have and stuff these days, it seems daunting, should something happen. So my kind of first thoughts.
One of the common themes for all of us is that we're the ones that are, I guess, the household financial managers. Like we're doing the day-to-day things. And it's really helpful to have at least a once a year kind of deep dive of what your money situation looks like, both so that the person that isn't handling it day to day understands where you're at, what goals you can look towards for the next year, but also for the person that is managing the finances day to day. It's a big weight to carry. And we tend to worry about it. We tend to feel like, are we making the right decisions? Like it is a lot. And just having the ability to talk to your spouse or partner about, what the finances look like, so that you're not carrying kind of all that responsibility on your own plate. And that really, really helps. And things like the bill payments, keeping that organized, like knowing what bills are coming out, how they're being paid, and having a document that your partner can reference if something happened to you is really helpful, because sometimes the something happens could be just that you're burnt out and you just don't want to deal with the financial stuff for a little while, and it's just much easier to have that list organized so the other partner can just take over for a period of time.
That is such a good point. I love that. It's so true. It is a lot. Emotionally, it's a lot.
I mean, sometimes it's easier than others, right? Like if everything's going smoothly and you haven't had any big expenses and you haven't had any changes in your job and you're just rolling and you're like, this is good. I know how much I can spend. I know how much to save. I know all of that. But then when things change, that's when it gets a lot more stressful. That's when you have to really sit down and have those conversations and take a really good look at what you've got going on. And those can be positive changes, like Sybil was saying, like if you get a raise or if you get a bonus or something like that. They can also be like not so positive changes, or at least in the moment they don't feel very positive, right? Like a salary cut or, you know, a loss of job or whatever. Any of those things can really bring challenges that need conversation. I remember when we decided to purchase, well, when I decided we should purchase a rental property, and my husband was like, all right, well, talk me through it. So I explained like why I thought it would be a good investment, why I wanted to do it, all of the things. And I said I would eventually, I think it would be, I would like to own multiple investment properties. My idea was like a good starter investment, right? And so he totally got on board. We like did it all together. I didn't like buy the condo myself, right? We did it all together. And so that was another change. Just like Sybil was saying, you know, if you start investing in your wealth, you got to think about these things in a different way. So I think that we've been super fortunate. It sounds like all three of us have been super fortunate in the fact that it's not this source of like constant fighting, right? Like even when we've had disagreements, it's been like, we probably shouldn't spend that much. Okay, you're probably right. Like, right? Or something like that. Or like, hey, let's just splurge on this. It'll be fine. We'll figure it out in a couple months. It'll all balance out. But I know that for some people, that's not the case, right? Their money is not combined in any way, shape, or form. Everything is separate, or one person handles all the money and the other person doesn't know anything. The best plan is not the same for everybody, but the biggest key is that both of you know exactly what's going on. I think that's the biggest piece, right? And even if you have your funds completely separate, I'm making an assumption, Mary Lee, that like if something happened with you or your partner's job or income or whatever, that the two of you would figure that out together. You wouldn't just let the other person flounder. And I think that's the biggest key, whether you have them joined together and you manage it all in that one pot, or whether you have things separate, but you're supporting each other. I think that's the biggest key, right? Is just kind of working together to manage everything and to be really open about it.
Yeah, I think for us, what's been really tricky, it has been the transition because we have different households. You know, we have kids from prior relationships. So it wasn't an easy, like, you know, we're going to start a relationship. We have a plan to get married and we're just going to combine everything. It just was a bit more complicated. It will evolve over time. Like this is what happens with finances, is things can evolve over time. And with subsequent relationships, it is trickier. Like you just have more decisions. You have more people that you're individually wanting to leave money to or to support. So we have a lot of decisions that we do on our own. Like, you know, I have an adult daughter. Sometimes I need to help her financially. That's coming out of my money. Same for my partner. And then, of course, if we needed to support each other with something, then we're doing that together. We do have different spending styles. So often I do have situations where my partner will want to do a vacation or something like that, and I just don't have the money at the time. So I've really learned how to communicate the boundaries and just say, I just can't do this right now. It's not within my budget. Can we look at something that's a bit more inexpensive or change the time frame? And that's been really, really successful because I don't want to stretch my finances just because, I just, sometimes I can't do all the same things, and that's okay. And that will evolve over time once things are combined in a more meaningful way.
I think the honesty is huge, right? Like I was super honest with my husband before we got married. Like, look, I still have this debt that I'm paying off. Like it's happening, but I have this. I still have student loans I'm paying off. Like I make the payments, but I'm not trying to like burden you with this, right? I wasn't trying to be like, here, take me and all my things. Surprise, right? I was very open and honest. We dated long distance for the first year that we were together. So if he wanted to travel, I'd be like, I can't afford that. Like I can't afford to stay there. And so sometimes it would be like I would buy the plane ticket and he would pay the hotel, right? We only were able to have those kind of conversations because I was really honest about where I was. I didn't like accumulate debt trying to keep up with him or anything like that. And I think that's a huge piece. I love that you're really open with your partner and you're not just like, okay, well, they want to do this, so I'll figure it out. You're like, nope, sorry, I can't make that happen. And I think that ties in with that trust piece that Sybil was saying. Like they're trusting you, you're trusting them with like your honesty and your openness and kind of your heart a little bit, right? Because they're not saying, well, forget you, I'm gonna go without you. It's just like working together to make everything happen. And it's kind of the key to a good relationship anyway, but it also really applies when it comes to the financial part.
Yeah, for sure. I would completely agree. And it comes like thinking about even if your finances are separate, still the we. What are our dreams as the we? Is it go on one vacation where one person rather do two and one person can only afford one? And then the we becomes, we can afford together one vacation or whatever. And then thinking about like now paying for college for the first time. We knew it was coming. We were trying to plan for it, but oftentimes with these big expenses that are just at certain points of your life, it's not until you're in the weeds of it that you feel those numbers, right? What do those additional numbers really mean to your day-to-day expenses and what you can spend on and what you need to save for? And can I take on a little more risk with my investments now that I see how much I'm really going to need to put two kids through US colleges, things like that, right? I still have time to make some decisions. And I think that's an open mindset too, of like, it's not all or nothing. Even if you agree on something, hopefully you can talk about it and change your agreement if that's what needs to do, or that's what we did, and now we realize how expensive college is. We need to do X. How can we together, make sure that that happens, kind of thing. I mean, we all are hopefully planning for our retirements, right? But having that empathy and that understanding of what you will really need, and that discipline maybe is a better word too, of that day-to-day life to meet that bigger goal. Sometimes it takes us a while to get there, and that's okay. Right? It's like take your whatever time you need, but as soon as you maybe I want to do something different, that's the point, to keep that open mind and not self-sabotage and be like, I should have done it differently. Well, the past happened, right? Now what can I do though? For example, 529s, college funds here in the United States. I knew about them. They're tax advantaged, We put our money in for our kids. We couldn't contribute when we were overseas, so those are on the smaller side. And now we're at the point of using it, right? So what does it really look like, this thing that we've been putting money into for 18 years? What does it really look like to use it? And then grandparents want to gift us some money in a 529. Well, now I've learned they should open it under their name because it's better for this and this reason, right? And it's okay. Like, you will learn it, hopefully some of it before you get there, but you also learn some of it when you get there. And that communication that we've been talking about this whole time, and that trust to move forward maybe in a different way, is so, so important. Because as we grow up, we're growing up, ladies. Life changes and our money uses and expenses and all the things change.
Well, and it's one thing to like plan out groceries and all of those things, but those bigger goals, those are some juicier conversations. And often that's where you see the completely different perspectives in a couple, right? Like some people think that they want to pay for the full ride for their kids to go to college. The other partner may say, no, I want them to work part-time or, to contribute financially. Same thing with retirement. One person might want to do a lot of travel and the other person wants to do hobbies and, be in their home. And it's hard in a relationship to come to some sort of agreement or arrangement on what those bigger goals are going to look like. So the conversations are not easy, and often they do evolve over time, and it's just important to have the discussions. I think that's just the key thing, is to make it normal and okay to talk about money with your partner.
I think that is the perfect place to wrap it up, right? Make it normal to have these conversations. So thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to like and follow our podcast. You can, if you're listening to us, you can also see us on YouTube. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we're available on all of the favorite podcasting platforms. And we would love to have you follow us and listen there. As always, we would love to hear from you. So please send us your questions and topic ideas, and we look forward to chatting with you next week.